Welcome to the Sisterhood of Sweat. Today's guest is Brian J. Dixon. Brian is a podcaster, conference speaker, and a business coach. He believes that each of us were made for a purpose. You will discover that purpose by clarifying your calling, discovering your audience, and creating your products, which will help you to navigate a clear path to impact and income. Brian is passionate about helping authors, speakers, and aspiring messengers create a sustainable business through growing their platform and creating compelling online courses. He is the co-founder of Hope Writers, a membership site of over 2,000 working writers. Brian has a doctoral degree from the University of San Diego. He and his wife, Julie, live in Charlotte, North Carolina, with their 3 young children. This interview was very impactful. Brian has written a book called Start With Your People. And this is a lesson I learned early on, and I talk about it in the interview, but just focusing on the people right in front of you is one of the biggest messages I could ever teach anyone in business or just in life in general. And so this was a really amazing interview. Another thing I really liked about what he talks about in his book and he talked about on this interview was doing a 360, do a 360 assessment of your life and the people in your life. And part of that was writing letters to people and getting their feedback. He wrote 53 letters to people out there, getting their feedback. So that was surprising. And also, I have to say, I told him, that's scary. So yeah, you're going to get that real feedback. If you have anybody out there, they may give you honest feedback. He said they were very specific. So this promises to be an interview that's going to open your mind up to new and different things. There were a lot of refreshing things that we talked about that were different from what mainstream teachings that we're getting today. So I think you guys will really enjoy this. Without further ado, let's welcome the one, the only Brian J. Dixon to the Sisterhood of Sweat. And I have been diving into Brian's book. So we're going to start, I believe in starting at the beginning. So I think I really want Brian to share his story because it's pretty dynamic how your life was forever changed. Can you share that with the audience?
Yeah, absolutely. So, one of the things that I've learned is it's really hard for us to read our own label, for us to see like what are we awesome at, and then also where are we stuck. And I really believe that the only way that things change is if you change. You have to make that decision, and sometimes it's just hard to see your blind spots, right? That's why they're called blind spots. So there was a little exercise that I did. And it was called a 360 assessment, where I reached out to people anonymously, gave them a link to a survey to fill out, and they didn't even have to write their name. So I still don't know who filled it out. But it basically has 3 questions. What's Brian awesome at? Where's Brian stuck? And if you could ask anything, or if you could say anything to Brian anonymously, what would you say? And Linda, reading through that anonymous feedback showed me some major blind spots I have in my life. And now that they're blind spots, now that I'm aware of them, they're no longer blind spots. So who do I need to become in order to address those issues? And so for me personally, the issue was that I put projects over people. I was so focused on the goal that I was missing the people in my life. And and once you know what the problem is, just like we know in fitness, right? Once we know where the gap is, now it's just a matter of implementing a system to fixing the gap or to closing the gap.
I really can relate to what you're saying today because one of my top personality traits in the Strength Finder is achiever. Mm-hmm. And I think you can get lost in all of that, focusing on your goal so heavily that the goal matters the most. So I can so see what you're saying about that. But what I
Yes.
found is it's empty if you achieve all these things and you don't have your people in your corner because you were ignoring them the whole time.
That's right. Yeah. And that changes everything. Like for many of you who have these fitness goals, right? And you want to get to that next step, there's a way to do it with your people and include them in the process, and where they're cheering you on and they're excited about your goal. And especially when you're tempted to give up on your fitness journey, or whatever it happens to be, maybe you've made some decisions about doing more of one thing and less of something else. You need that support of the people in your life. But when we don't include them in our dreams, we should all over them. We're like, you should do this, or you should support me. They don't know that. So what can we do to encourage people in our life to say, dad's working on a goal, or mommy's working on this goal. I've got this marathon coming up, or I've got this fitness competition, or I'm trying to do this 100-day, exercise process, like whatever it is, and including people in that process, including your kids, including your spouse, to cheer you on, will actually help you better achieve the goal by including those people.
Oh, I so believe that, because it's that support. It gives you more energy and more strength. It is so hard when you feel you're going against the grind and you're fighting, maybe your spouse because you decided to do something all on your own and you didn't include them or have their blessing. Now,
Right.
what if you have tried all those things and you still don't have their blessing? What is your recommendation on that?
They don't see what's in it for them.
Okay.
That's what it is. They don't really understand. I did this in business. So I thought the best thing I can do is I can work really hard. I can get as many clients as possible. I can serve them really well. And what I realized is I wasn't including my wife in the process. So I'd sign a client before I even talked to her. And what I learned is just by slowing down and saying to her, hey, I'm thinking about working with this person. What do you think? And giving her the space and the time, which is hard, especially for those of us that are that type A kind of personality, really driven. Like, we want to go so fast. And just slowing down and saying, hey, I've got to get back to this person in a day. So why don't you, if you want to give me feedback, why don't you take some time, go check out their stuff? And I got to tell you, Linda, like, if I would have done that for a couple clients, just ask Julie, hey, go check them out, see what you think, and let me know if you think it's a good fit. She would have saved me some major headaches, of people that I wasn't meant to work with. So in the same way, that goal that you have, maybe it's this fitness goal, you've got this competition coming up, or you want to do this, maybe it's some sort of a challenge. Maybe it's some sort of a new food regimen. It's going to affect everybody in your life. So before you dive into it, which I can do that, I can just dive in with both feet. Right?
Oh my gosh. Right.
So instead of doing that, what if you were to say to your people, hey guys, what do you think? What if we did something fun together? Mommy's got a couple ideas, right? Or dad's got a couple ideas. And so as an example, my wife and I are both now training for a marathon. I'm doing the full, she's doing the half. It's her first big running event. She's never been a runner. She's active, but she's never been a runner. But before we decided to do that, we took the time to look at the different dates, to look at the different options. Is she going to do the 5K or the half or the full? We talked about it. And so actually in the book, I talk about a 4-stage process for getting your spouse on the same page. So it seems like this would be really relevant for right now, right? So it starts with the same pain. Like, what is the pain? And let's get on the same pain. So PAIN, the pain. So the pain might be, like we're staying up too late. We're watching too much Netflix. We're binging on too much ice cream. And I feel terrible in the morning. Do you feel terrible in the morning? Yeah, I do. Okay. Same pain. We feel terrible in the morning. We feel groggy and we feel like, tired and sluggish. So that's the pain. So now second step, same page. So what do we want to feel? Oh, I want to feel rested and excited, and I actually kind of want to have like a morning where I can take some time to journal or take some time to pray, or maybe take some time to kind of do whatever I want before the kids are awake, which means I need to wake up before the kids. Okay. So that's the same page. Well, how do we get to that same page? We need to be on the same plan. So now it's a matter of, and this is what Julie did, my wife, is she signed up for a half marathon coaching program. So she signed up, she has like how many miles she has to run a day. And literally last night, Linda, when she said to me, hey, tonight I got to run 4.5 miles, I said, go babe, you got this. And she said, is it okay if I leave at 6:30? I leave halfway through dinner and you just take care of the kids. I'm like, same page, we're in, I'm in, go run, go, get out of here. She took a while to put her shoes on. I'm like, come on, get going. You gotta follow the plan because we agreed on it together. And then here's the best part, step number 4, living in the same power. And there's nothing quite as impactful as a couple who is, getting on the same page, living out the same plan, but living in the same power. And it's like a need comes to you, a neighbor reaches out and says, hey, I'm really struggling with this. Or you see somebody at church, or you see somebody in the community. And because you're on the same page, living out the same plan, living in the same power, you can immediately address that need. And you don't even have to check in with each other because you just know this is who we are. This is what we do. And that accelerates all of your goals when you take the time to build that out with your person.
Well, you're building trust there.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of that is missing in relationships because the couple doesn't consult one another on their decisions.
It happens,
which is mainstream America. I mean, really.
It happens all the time.
I mean, some of the things I hear preaching, the preaching, because there's preaching everywhere, not just in church.
Right.
People are, kind of cut loose the people that aren't on your team, basically, surround yourself. It's who you surround yourself with. I think it's who you are and how you're being with the people you surround yourself with.
Yeah.
I mean, of course, if you were surrounding yourself with criminals, that might be different, but
right.
Most of us are not. So I love this message. It's so refreshing.
Thank you so much.
So the 360, the assessment, doing a 360 is what I'm assuming it means. 53 people you reached out to. What was the craziest or most surprising response? Give me some of the responses you received.
Yeah, that's a good question. Because it's anonymous, I was expecting people to be a little bit more general in their feedback. And I was surprised at how specific it was. So as an example, and one of the things about an anonymous survey, like the one I sent out is called 360 Reach. So you can just Google 360 Reach. But the one I sent out, once somebody took the assessment, then they can share it with a friend. And so so as I was reading through the responses, there was one which told this whole long story about how this person used to be in charge of this website. And then Brian, that's me, got hired to help with the website. And I sort of took it over and how I like ruined all this guy's work and all this stuff. And it's like, I know who that person is, because they were so specific. And it was really easy for me, Linda, to like read that and go like, oh, he's just mad because I got hired to take over the job for him. But as I reread that comment, I realized that the way I approached the work, the way I approached him, because whatever business you happen to be in, there's going to be beginnings of agreements and completions of agreements, right? You're going to start a program with somebody, and eventually you're going to end a program with somebody. And who we are in the client acquisition process in the beginning, when everybody's happy and everybody's smiling, like it's easy to really be a person that shows up there. But what about when it gets awkward? What about when somebody says, you know what, I know we said we'd coach together, but I just can't afford it anymore, and they want to cancel? What do you do when somebody has a family situation and you've been counting on that deposit and they say, I can't come through, even though I shook hands on it, even though I signed something, I just can't make it happen. I'm really sorry. How do you address them in that situation? And what I've learned is the more we show up for people, the more gracious we are towards people. Often we Like there's no loss, right? There's actually gain. The ROI on relationships is always a positive. And we might not see it immediately from that particular person, but our reputation in 2019 precedes us. Just somebody saying one negative thing about you online can spread further and faster than ever before. So we really need to show up for our people in a way that serves them and puts them first. And that's some of the feedback that I got that I definitely needed to work on.
Yeah, I remember you in the book you said somebody wanted a refund.
Yeah.
Oh wow! Did you give it to her?
I did. Yeah. So in doing the 360 assessment and seeing, this is a blind spot that I have in my life, I then had a choice, and the choice was, do I want to keep living with that blind spot, or do I want to address it? And in addressing it, I started sending out apology emails. Hey, it's been a while, but the way our business ended, I feel like I could have done a better job, and I want to take responsibility for my part, and I want to ask for your forgiveness. So I sent a number of those emails out, and people generally were really gracious and said, thanks, Brian. Thanks for reaching out. I really appreciate it. And here's the thing, Linda, most of us have these broken relationships in our life where it's stuck. It is just stuck. And it's not just stuck. It's like that takeout meal that you left in the back of the fridge that you forgot about. And like 3 weeks later, it's starting to like somebody has to throw it away, Someone has to address the issue. And so you've got these relationships in your life that are broken. And the truth is, you're going to see that person again. You're going to bump into them at church. You're going to see them at your community center. You're going to see them at a conference. You'll see them at your kid's school. Like, you will see that person again. And why not deal with that issue before you see them again? Right. So I reached out to,
because it'll be awkward. You'll be hiding around the corner in Fresh Market or something.
We've all been there. Yeah, we've all been there where, we're walking down the aisle, like at Fresh Market or wherever you happen to be. And you see somebody, you're like, oh no, like I recognize it's been what am I going to say? And you have nothing to say.
Or you avoid them.
You avoid them. Exactly. So what if you were to
shop
go
a little longer down the cookie aisle?
You know exactly what I'm talking about. But that's not how I want to live.
Right.
I don't want to live that way. And so I want, as much as peaceful, I want to live as much as possible. I want to live at peace with all men, right? With all people. I want to be able to live a life of service, serving my family, my people, right? Living in a way that is serving, my faith well, my community well. And so the story that you were getting at is that there was somebody that came to mind. I was at a conference. I was speaking at a conference. I thought I'd cleaned up all those broken relationships. But the truth is, the more we clean things up, the more dirt we see, right?
Oh my goodness, right?
It's like when you start cleaning up your house.
Oh yeah.
Or you clean up your car and you're like, oh, I haven't looked under the seat for a long time. I had no idea. And so I really think that that's where the healing comes, is by going deep. Like most of the time it's at the root level. And so we can clean up that top, but we've got to keep going down. And so I was at a conference, I was speaking at this conference. I thought I was doing a great job. I'm like, man, this is amazing. I'm in my zone of genius. I'm on fire. I cleaned up all these relationships. I'm teaching people well. And I look across the conference center, across the room, right in the back, there's somebody that I see like way in the back, just like you're saying, like at Fresh Market. I see this person at this conference, and there I am on stage with a microphone and PowerPoint and the whole deal. And I realized that's a broken relationship that needs to be fixed. So I reached out to her when I got home. Wasn't man enough to do it at the conference. I waited till I got home. I sent an email and I said, listen, the way that our relationship ended, I feel like I could have done a better job. Will you forgive me? She wrote me back, Linda, and she said, if you're really serious, you'll refund my deposit. This is from like 3 years ago. So imagine, a fitness client coming to you, and you saying like, I really feel like I could have served you better.
Wow.
And then a couple of years later, they say, well, I want you to refund what I paid you. And so I had a choice, am I going to defend my position? Am I going to fight? or am I going to serve? Am I going to humble myself? And so I checked in with my wife, Julie, and I just said, hey, this client wants me to refund. What do you think? And she said, if that's the right thing to do, we need to do it. So I wrote her back and I said, you got it. What's the number? Because I couldn't even remember. It was so long ago. She told me the number. She told me what it was. And then she said, I'd even take half of that. And I said, okay. Sent it over PayPal. And the email that I got back from her after sending the deposit back was like frameable. She said that she's blessed to know that there are people like me in the world. Turned an adversary into an advocate. And the truth is, we have adversaries in our life. We have people that we burn out that are talking bad about us behind our backs. And it's because of something we did or said. And I had to acknowledge that for myself. And now when it happens, when I get maybe a little snarky or say something sarcastically or think I'm trying to be funny, but it hurts somebody's feelings, instead of letting that fester, I just need to deal with it right away. And you'd be like, Linda, are we good? I feel like I was being a little too silly. Are we okay? And for you to say, you know what, that wasn't really kind. I'm like, oh man, I'm sorry about that. You forgive me? And just going right there. This actually happened the other day. I was at this conference and the person that was hosting the conference had a really hard sale. Like he was trying to sell people on this high level membership thing. And part of his tactic was to use guilt. And that's not an ethical tactic. Like I disagree with that tactic. And I called him on it. And I said, listen, the way you're trying to sell me on this is not going to work because I don't want to live that way where I feel bad and then I buy something. And he tried to use guilt and he tried to say, well, I've been giving you all this training over the last couple of days. And I said, hang on, do you feel like I owe you something? And that sometimes is what we need to do. We need to reach out to the people in our life and say, is there some kind of debt? Like, do you feel like I didn't live up to my part? And here's the thing, Linda, being open to them saying, yes, I do. Yes, I do feel like you didn't own up to your part. And then for us to say, okay, I want to own that. What can I do to make it right? In this situation, it wasn't. It was just a tactic he was using on me that didn't work, But for some of us, we need to say that. We need to say to those people in our life, hey, listen, I know I've been getting this thing for free. And I just want to see, like, are we good? Or do you feel like, is that agreement still okay? Because sometimes what happens is we enter into a business arrangement sort of accidentally. And then a year or two later, we're like, are they still okay? Like, and then there's this bitterness that's growing. We might not even be aware of it. So just to take the time, that's what it means to start with your people, just to take the time to check in with people and open the door to getting that feedback. Because often we're surprised at, oh, I had no idea there was a dragon behind that door. But you got to know what it is. Otherwise, you're gonna get fire all over you.
How does that help you to up-level your life, knowing the negative feedback as well as the positive feedback?
Oh, there's so much there. I mean, that's everything right there. If you want to up-level your life, which every day I'm like, how can I up-level my life? There's two things. First of all, I need to know whose business it is. And this is what I'm working through right now. I need to stop shoulding all over people. They should take their fitness more seriously. They should take their health more seriously. They should take their finances or their job more seriously. None of that's my business. My business is owning it for myself, right? Is living as a leader and leading from my level, leading around me. And when I recognize something in somebody where there's a gap, I need to look at myself and go, ooh, the reason I see it in them is because it's also in me. And so what can I do to clean it up and level it up in my own life first? So that's the first thing. And then the second one would be being open to that feedback is the way you improve. It's just like, think about our coaching, right? If you're trying to, you're doing a lifting competition where you're doing weightlifting, or you're doing some sort of a running, event. If you had a coach that could come alongside you and look at your technique and give you specific feedback and say, okay, Linda, you gotta, you can reach your arms out a little bit more, or, use your legs a little bit more, whatever the thing is, they're seeing something that you can't see. So by accepting that feedback, or at least by listening to that feedback, because sometimes the feedback is off, but at least listening to it, you can make the decision to implement it. And it's a great way to level up your life.
I love that. Because I think a lot of the time we just focus on what we want to hear or the positive feedback and
Yeah.
we don't want anything to do with the negative feedback. But I think sometimes you could just consider, what are they saying to me? Is any of that true?
Yeah.
And what could I do about it?
Yeah. I love that. Is it true? Because I think it's important to look at that. But even in the most sarcastic, negative comments, I think there's the seed of a little bit of truth. There's just a little bit there. And so it's important for us not to be defensive, even if it's not said in the nicest way, and to look at it and say, okay, how can I potentially see their perspective? And what can I do to repair that relationship? And what can I do to prevent that same issue from popping up again in the future?
I really think a lot of what you're talking about today is just humbling yourself,
Don't you
right?
hate that? Yes, that's exactly what it is. Our culture doesn't celebrate people who humble themselves, right? Our
Right.
culture celebrates people who boast themselves up. I mean, you can look at politics, you can look at, you can look at sports, you can look at entertainment. I mean, most of it's like, look at me, but really what are people really attracted to in our lives? It's when you lift other people up, right? And that's what we do as coaches. That's what we do, especially in fitness. That's what I do in my own coaching to clients. I just got off a coaching call with a client, and it was, look at the amazing things you're doing. I'm so proud of you. I think you're doing an incredible job. Here's a couple things to improve, and I'm here to walk with you to help you improve those things. But for the most part, I just want to say, like, you're rocking it, like, way to go. Think about how that feels, right? It just inspires and encourages people. We don't have to tear down people in order to elevate ourselves.
And I love the whole start with your people. I remember being in my smaller studio before I moved into the one I'm in now. And there's gyms all around me and they're huge, corporate gyms and all this money sunk into them. And I just kind of, at that point, had landed in my own business. I'd never
Yeah.
planned it, and it just kind of happened. Now, this one's way more planned out. But I remember at the time, I just realized, instead of worrying about this gym over here and that gym and all,
Hmm.
I'm just going to focus on the people right in front of me.
Yeah, I
And
love that.
that was the biggest lesson I could ever learn or teach anyone, is to focus on the people you're helping right in front of you, and it's going to multiply.
Yeah, that's exactly it. I love that.
Now, what are 5 steps you could give us today to start with our people?
Oh, but it has to start at home. Especially for those with big goals. Linda, I know with you and your fitness journey, you had some really big goals. You've achieved a lot of those goals. And that success, that achievement, standing on that stage or being on that magazine cover or winning that award, it rings hollow if you can't come home and look at your person in the eye and say, thanks for your support. Like, I couldn't have done it without you. And so for many of us who have achieved those kind of goals or hit our big, the top level in our industry, we know what it's like to do it with people, and we know what it's like to put people down so we can focus on that achievement. So that's the first step. It's just to turn to the people in our life. Here's a question I try to ask Julie, my wife, every day, to say, what can I do to make your day? So today, I pushed back this podcast interview 15 minutes because guess what I was doing? I was picking up my son. Because when I said, what can I do to make your day? She said, hey, can you go pick up Hudson? I said, no problem. I'll move some things around. And that's what I had to do, because that's where it starts, right? Success starts at home. So number one, check in with the people in our life. Number two, I'd say that the whole idea of shoulding on people, of saying you should do this and you should do this, and starting with the person in the mirror. So in Start With Your People, in my book, I have this 10-step exercise called the Mirror Manifesto. Basically, how do you have a personal mission statement for your life? And starting there, because there's so much work for us to do, and it's not on other people. Most of it is on ourselves for other people, right? So that would be a
Yeah.
second step. I have as a bonus section in the book, there's a morning routine. I'd say if you don't, if your morning is not set, the rest of your day, is all over the place. Like, really starting your day well would probably be number 3. if there's a chapter on difficult people, the people in your life that are really hard to get along with, and cleaning up those relationships can make such a huge difference. And then number 5 is the power of a mastermind. Having a group of colleagues, of people that are at your level or maybe even a little bit above you or a little further than where you are, meeting on a regular basis to challenge and encourage people. Actually, I'm doing this on my computer, and one of the members of my mastermind, while we're recording this, I just got a message from him, from my buddy Matt, and he said, "You rock, dude. That is all." Like, how awesome is that?
That's
Just
awesome.
randomly, and think about how, like, I'm here and I'm answering your questions and I'm showing up for you and we're having a conversation. But at the corner of my eye, this little message pops up from my buddy Matt, who I think is awesome. And he says, "You rock, dude. That is all." It's like, so if you don't have that in your life, you need some people that want to rock with you. You need some people that want to brag on you and be excited about your success, not threatened by it. So those are a couple steps to up-level your life.
So when we just had a mastermind in the summer, and it was amazing. It was my first one. I just decided to have one because Lori Harder of the Bliss Project had
she's awesome.
talked about masterminds, and
Yeah.
I thought I need to be in a part of something like that.
Yes.
And with like-minded individuals that celebrate your success. What do you do when you're with people that don't celebrate your success? You've tried to bring them to the table, but they're still not celebrating your success. What is your advice on that?
Yeah, there's a whole chapter on how do you deal with those kind of situations. I think there's a few things. Number 1 is just taking responsibility for your part, because sometimes you ran all over them, and just realizing that the reason they're so broken is because you broke them. There's something that you did, right? It's, you think about it like the kind, like an animal, like a puppy, like most puppies are really sweet and wonderful. But if you push them in a corner and start yelling at them or trying to hit them, like, they're going to bite you. Like, and so sometimes there's people in our lives that we've pushed into a corner. We've taken for granted, we've maybe said some things or, been really inconsiderate. So that's the first step, is just to check yourself and to see, is there anything I've done to contribute to this? Number 2 would be, I'm a person of faith, so I follow the Bible, and there's in Matthew 18, there's this principle, which is the first thing you do when you're dealing with a difficult person is you have to address your brother. You have to address them first. So you go to them and you say, "Hey, I'd love to clean this up. Can we talk about this?" So the way I talk about it in the book is, can we clear the air? Hey, can we clear the air?
Yeah, and be direct.
That's the first step. Be direct. Number 2 is, if they ignore or they don't want to meet with you or they don't want to address whatever it happens to be, then you say, you bring in a third party and you bring in somebody else to help to clear the air with you. And if they still won't meet with you, this is the Matthew 18 principle, then basically it's okay. You can move on. You can let that relationship go because you've done what you can. You start by trying to address it one-on-one. If it still doesn't work, bring in somebody else. And if it still doesn't work, they don't want to meet with you at that point, listen. But what I've learned is still keeping that door open, because you just never know, Linda. You never know what that person's going through. Some of the people that I was like, how could they do this? How could they treat me this way? I find out a year or 2 later, they were going through divorce. They were going through bankruptcy.
Oh my gosh. This is so true.
You just never know. This actually happened. I reached out to somebody the other day, and it's been a while. And I said, when we were working together, it just seemed like you were kind of off your game, but I never really felt like I was comfortable enough to ask what was going on. Like, what's been going on? And she had a 2-book deal with a big publisher, and the publisher dropped her and didn't do the second book. And she basically went into depression for 12 months. And no wonder she was ending all of her relationships, because she was so frustrated about what was happening in her life and in her business. So you just never know what people are going through. I love to quote,
true.
It's a quote from a book called The Soul of Shame by Kurt. I'm trying to remember his last name. It's Curtis somebody. And he says, if you treat people like they're hurting, you'll only be right 80% of the time. So what if we treated people like they're hurting? What if you treated people like they're going through some stuff? Because most people are going through some stuff.
This is so true. And I think the older that I get, I'm getting younger, but when the age keeps going up,
Yeah.
start to recognize, and I really think about, what is that person going through?
Yeah.
Because when you really put yourself in their place and you think about why they may be acting like that, has nothing to do with you, it isn't
Yes.
personal, you free yourself from a lot. And you also you can free yourself from any kind of resentment, and
Mhm.
also be more able to help them, because you're looking beyond what's actually going on, because it's never about that. It's
That's
never
right.
about the fights. It's always something more than that.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And you know what? I don't do it perfectly all the time. I probably mess it up most of the time. But what I've been learning is, if I give people the benefit of the doubt, if I treat them the way that I wish they would treat me, it never it just it doesn't return void. You know what I mean? It will benefit me somehow in the long term. And
Right.
often I don't see how, but then a year or two later, that person shows up, or somebody that person knows shows up and says, hey, this person said something really nice about you. And you don't ever know how it's going to turn out, but you know how you can show up. A quote I love to say is, the pebble rarely sees the ripple. You think about a pebble when you like throw it in the lake or whatever, like the pebble is like halfway down to the bottom by the time the ripples are going away from where it hit. And so that's kind of what we get to do, right? We get to make an impact, but we never see the full impact of the work that we do. We never see the full impact of the life that we live. But every once in a while, we get this little glimpse of grace. Every once in a while, somebody returns and says, thank you so much for showing up for me, even though I was a jerk to you. And for me, that's I pay attention, and I try to remember those stories when I'm having a really hard day.
I love that. A lot of us out here, after listening to you talk about 53 people, this whole 360 assessment,
Yeah.
myself included, we may feel a little afraid, like, whoa, how can you help us to maybe step out into this 360 assessment? Maybe we won't send to 53 people, but
Right.
what's the starting point, and how can we get out of being afraid?
Yeah, I don't think you are ever not afraid. My buddy Ru Sukup says, do it scared. Sometimes you just have to face the fear and do it anyway. But I'd say, especially for those of you that are trying to grow a business, you're trying to do more fitness coaching, you're trying to up level your life, is that we've got some big blind spots, and for us to say, okay, for me to be a pro, right? I think it's Marie Forleo who says, be the best in the world at what you do. So imagine if you're the best in the world. Like, imagine if I were to be the best podcast interviewee possible. Well, what would I do? Well, I'd make sure I have the door closed. I'd make sure I have a decent microphone. I'd make sure my lighting's right. Like, what can I do? And some of that is getting feedback. And when we
Okay.
get feedback, right,
Perfect.
it
Perfect.
shows us what can we do to improve. And then when somebody says, here's how you can improve, we have a choice. We can either listen and improve, or we can ignore and keep struggling. And so I'd much rather sacrifice my humility a little bit, right? My ego, in order to get the feedback so that I can get better at what I'm doing. Because the better we get, I still believe this, our society, yes, it celebrates people that are egocentric, but it also celebrates excellence. If you're the best in your field, you will get reputation, you will get results, you will get rewards from that. So I want to continuously improve what I'm doing. And one of the best ways to do that is to get that feedback.
And you're going to have to do some work, because when you're getting
Yes.
feedback,
Yes.
you're going to have to do some work. And I think that's part of it too. You
Oh,
may
yeah.
feel like, I'm already working a lot.
Right.
Now I have to do this too. But in the
Yeah.
long run, when you're listening to that feedback, it
Yeah.
could save you so much, like heartache,
So
time,
much.
money. It could really literally change your life and your business.
Yeah. And there's joy in the work. Like, work is a good thing. Some of the people that I know that are at like the top of their field, they could have retired a long time ago, but they work just as hard now because it's fun. It's fun to serve people. It's fun to get results. It's fun to push yourself and stretch yourself. So don't be afraid of the work. Do the work well, because you know that the results will come when we serve people well.
I love that. I love that. Why did you become a writer? I mean, why do you think you've decided to write a book?
I think we all have a mess that we have to deal with. We all have a mess that we go through, and your mess is your message. And when we're given this message, when we have to deal with this mess and clean it up, that when we see that there are other people that are dealing with the same mess or something very similar, and we look at them, we say, oh, if only they knew. And that's where a book comes from. A book comes from you, especially for those of you that are watching that are in the fitness space. You have this message because you were dealing with your mess. You got it cleaned up. You found a system that worked for you. And now and this happens, right? As you walk through your life, as you go to the store, as you walk through your neighborhood, you see people that are in the middle of the mess, and you want to help them because you realize that you got out, or maybe you climb the wall. Use that analogy. You climb the wall. You want to reach your hand down and say, hey, let me help you as well. And there's so much joy in that, in serving people well and helping them overcome what they're dealing with. Your struggle will become your strength tomorrow is over the doorway in my fitness facility. Yeah, I love it. And it's true. And I think sometimes when I'm in a mess now, I think a lot differently. I think, okay, this is a mess. I'm not a mess. This is a mess. But when I get this figured out, it's going to be a heck of a message, and I'm going to deliver it, and I'm going to help other people. So when you can think of the fact of on the other side of the mess, you have a message. That's right. It really helps you to get through it, I think. So good. So good. Well, Linda, this has been so much fun. Thanks so much for having me. Yeah, I've really enjoyed having you on. And where can people get your book and get in touch with you? Awesome. So the book is called Start With Your People, and it's available on Amazon or wherever you happen to buy books. And so for those of you that are audio listeners, I recorded the audiobook, which was super fun. So you can get that at Audible or through Amazon. And my website is briandixon.com. I have a little quiz on there to help you get unstuck, help you get some clarity in your life to move forward. Wow, I really love that. I want to acknowledge you for being so brave and courageous in the first place to do this 360 assessment, that a lot of us might be a little gun shy to actually face somebody that we may have had an issue with and write a book about it. It's pretty brave, pretty bold. And so I just want to acknowledge you for making such a bold move. And also, what is your why? What is your why? Why are you doing all this? Yeah, I believe that our purpose is people, that, we don't have to spend years or go to some cave or at the top of some mountain to try to figure out our why. I think we look around at the people in our life, we look them in the eyes and we say, wow, can I help you? What can I do to make your day? Or what are you working through right now? So for me this morning, my 9-year-old, he needed a listening ear. He needed me to really show up for him, get down on my knees, look him right in the eye and hear what he's thinking about today. My wife needed me to send her a text message and say, hey, what can I do? She said, I need you to pick up our youngest son. And I said, okay, I'm in, I'll do it. I think you need me to show up for your people right now. And so that's my why. I believe your why is actually serving the people that are in your life. Right. Absolutely. And the last question, what are 3 simple tips you can leave with the audience? And this is just basically life tips. Yeah, I think there's the power of the morning routine of that first hour of the day is getting clear on your priorities, getting clear on your vision for the day is really important. Number 2 is asking for help. And number 3 is accepting help. I've seen this often. I was at a coffee shop a few hours ago and somebody had too many boxes. She was carrying these boxes out to the trash. And I said, hey, can I help you? She said, no, I'm fine. No, she wasn't. Clearly she needed help. And we do that to ourselves every day.
Oh, wow.
Right? Somebody says, can I help you? And you're like, no, I'm fine. And your garbage boxes are falling all over your face. So to say, sure, yeah, I'd love you to help me. Yeah, can you grab the door real quick? That'd be awesome. What you do when you reject somebody's help is you're not allowing them the blessing of having helped you. So those would be my 3 tips.
I love it. I love it. And I love the third one because I feel guilty of that.
We do
Accept the help when somebody offers.
That's
Well,
right.
thank you so much for coming on the Sisterhood of Sweat. And thanks everybody for listening. Leave a great review for Brian in iTunes and go by Start With Your People. Bye everybody. Thanks for listening.